Welcome, everyone. This is Rotary Club of Worldwide Impact. We're excited to share our mission and the work we do as part of Rotary International with you today. My name is Sam Kendall, and I am your host today for today's program. For those who don't know, Rotary International is a global network of 1.4 million neighbors, friends, leaders, and solvers in more than 46,000 clubs, all united in a common goal of making positive impact in our communities and worldwide. As a Rotary Club, our Rotary Club approaches every conversation as an opportunity to learn and grow together. And our goal is to connect with and hear from fascinating and inspiring speakers, often with a message focused on the power of ideas to change lives and ultimately the world, and bring you all a little inspiration that allows you to think about how you can make a difference as well. You may be hearing this on your favorite podcasting service. I hope you are. Or perhaps you're watching us on our YouTube channel. Hello, and all of our smiling faces. Or you're viewing it on our club website. If you enjoy the program, please share with your friend and don't forget to leave us a good rating. As always, and as everyone says, we do love those 5 stars. Now, today we are honored to have with us Phill Gittins, who is the Education Director of World Beyond War. Phill will be talking with us today about how to expand Rotary's impact on peace, addressing the elephant in the room. And I, for one, cannot wait for you all to hear it. So let's sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired. Phill, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's get started. I'm gonna kind of hand the mic over to you here for the start, and then we'll start having questions afterwards. Phill, take it away.
Super. Thank you so much. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Thanks for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to be with some of my favorite people around the world, Rotary, and in particular that are interested in thinking through big ideas and understanding and hopefully improving their impact on people and the planet. And that really leads me to talk what I'm going to be talking about today. And I I thought of a kind of a provocative title for the talk today. But the idea is that I'm going to give a perspective, share some ideas with everybody, but then hopefully we're going to have a lot of time for questions and answers. So the title, as Sam said, expanding Rotary's impact, addressing the elephant in the room. Particularly, I want to talk about what is the elephant in the room? Why does it matter? Not just for Rotary, but why does it matter for those that are interested in ideas of sustainable peace and sustainable development, but also those that are interested in mutually assured survival and making sure that we have the best chances of surviving on the planet. And then, as Rotarians, as Rotary, we're always interested in what can we do about it. So hopefully we want to leave today with some ideas of what can I do, what can we do to make a difference, as you said before, and try and improve the impact that we're doing. So that's where we're going. Sam said a little bit about my bio, but I think the biggest thing to say here is two things. One is that I've been involved with Rotary for a long time now, maybe about 15 years. I'm a Rotary Peace Fellow, a positive peace activator, huge fan of the work that Rotary and the bigger, wider ecosystem does around the world. And at the same time, I've really studied and worked and honed my skills in the field of peace and positive change over the last 20 years, studying a lot with regards to what are the biggest challenges with regards to peace and development, along the way, getting my PhD and writing books about it and speaking keynotes, including UN, including UNESCO, including others, giving a perspective on. So the reason why I say that is because I know what's working really well within Rotary, and I also have an insight into areas where things could be improved. And I hopefully want to share a perspective, with you on that today, based on my experience. The things that I'm going to be talking about will be drawing from our multiple award-winning book, which is called A Global Security System, an Alternative to War. It's basically a synthesis of the best global thinking, strategy, policy, research, and practice, focus on the world's biggest threat to peace and development. Now, I'm currently working on The next version, I was mentioning to Raquel, which hopefully he says I will be finished. It will be finished by the end of this year. It will be called From a War System to a Peace System. It's actually been updated because we've listened to our global community. And for those that don't know, World Beyond War is a global grassroots community. We work with hundreds of thousands around the world. We have Peace Pledge signatures in 203 countries, and we have chapters in over 50 countries around the world and work with thousands of affiliate organizations, such as World Beyond War, such as Rotary, sorry. So this is a little bit about what we do. But first of all, let's take a quick step back and think about Rotary. Rotary, huge, massive network, very, very, very diverse, doing lots of wonderful, impactful work in broad brushstrokes in these 7 core areas. In addition to the diversity, Rotary is best known really for its humanitarian service and business work. One of the things that you all have in common, though, the 46,000 clubs around the world, the 1.4 million members around the world, you're all interested in understanding what can I do to improve my impact. One of the areas you're particularly interested in is around peace, which is both a new and old for Rotary. Old in the sense that it's always been part of your DNA, you know, alongside the UN, Paul Harris himself always spoke about peace. New in the sense that's I don't know if you can hear my baby in the background there, but he's just walking by. New in the sense that you have this really great relationship with the Institute for Economics and Peace. They're both old and both new with regards to peace. We also know there's no one way to build peace or development, no one model, no one approach. Okay, and actually the field gets criticized a lot for one size fits approaches to either peace or development. So what we need to do is take different approaches. But we do know there's one thing we need to avoid in all of this, whether it be development work, whether it be health work, whether it be peace work, we need to avoid the use of violence. Okay, so anything that brings about more violence or the threat of violence is something that we need to avoid in terms of our approaches to peace building. So with that in mind, and this gets to the core of the argument, as Rotary thinks about ways to improve its impact, whether that be on peace building, whether that be on the people that they serve in the communities themselves, the planet, don't forget the important yet often overlooked elephant in the room. The elephant is called war. And when I talk about war, I'm not talking about the war of the moment. And I'm going to say something about this shortly. So this is my argument. There's no viable approach to achieving sustainable peace and development that does not engage with and replace the current system. We currently have a war system which prioritizes peace through violence or aggression. Now, when I'm talking, and if there's one thing to come away with today in terms of a big idea, it's this. When we're talking about war, we need to get away from thinking of the war of the day. For example, Israel, Gaza, Ukraine, Russia. These are necessary and they definitely need to be ended. But the best way of trying to end wars in any place around the world is not to react to each particular wars, okay? Is not to react to the crisis, which is what really, really often does take place, or respond to the symptoms. What we need to do is have a proactive approach and stop preparing for war in the first place and instead prepare for peace. And in order to do that, we need to think in systems. Now, IP is very good in terms of thinking about peace systems. We also need to match that with thinking about the war system. I'm going to say a little bit more about that shortly. So here's the argument. Why is it so important for Rotarians to be thinking about the war system? War is, in a nutshell, peace and development in reverse. Let's think about this. If you're interested in climate change, if you're interested in environmental peace building, ecological security, the war system is a leading destroyer of the natural environment. The military is one of the largest institutional emitters of fossil fuels and users of fossil fuels on the planet. So if you're interested in climate change, then you have to be interested in war and militarism. Secondly, it's the main cause of the risk of nuclear apocalypse. The links between the war system and nuclear apocalypse are very, very, very clear. Thirdly, military AI, which is largely unregulated, by the way, is a cause of the risk of uncontrollable technological warfare. All three of these, if we're interested in surviving as humanity on the planet, mutually assured survival, all three existential threats that we're facing right now go directly back to the war system, all three of them. But it's more than that. It's more than stopping the negative things, such as mutually assured survival. If we're interested in mutually assured flourishing, so sustainable peace and development, then we also need to think about war. Why is this? Well, war is a leading cause of death, trauma, and injury around the world. The leading cause. It's at the core of the economic and refugee crisis. We're now spending 2 trillion a year on preparing for war. Now, research shows, including by the UN, including by World Beyond War, about 30 billion is needed to end global starvation on the planet. When you look at peace building spending, IEP has done a lot of work on this as well. If you take what is spent on preparing for war, less than 1% of that is spent on preparing for peace or peace building work. The refugee crisis. If you're interested in this work, migration and things like this, we have over 120 million around the world. A leading cause of the refugee crisis is war, people fleeing. Not the only reason, but a leading cause. And then finally, this is the biggest thing, the biggest thing that's really an impediment to peace and development. What is one thing that we need in order to make progress on this planet? We need collaboration and cooperation. Rotarians can't do any of their work without collaborating with others. The war system is the main impediment to global cooperation on global crises. It's stopping us from collaborating. Why is that? Because it's about this us versus them, this region versus this region, this country versus this country. So hopefully I'll give a perspective backed by loads and loads of evidence that if we're really interested in peace and development, we really need to be interested in thinking about war. But what does this mean for Rotary? Well, it means many things, two of which is Rotary. It'd be important that Rotary thinks of itself both as a learning organization and an organization that learns. A learning organization in terms of thinking about how can I improve the work that I do out in the world with the people that I serve. Now, in order to do that really effectively, we need to think and look outside, but we also need to turn the mirror inwards and think, how can I learn? What can I learn to keep adapting? Okay, to the challenges that we face. Think of what's going on around the world right now. Take a look around the world. We see war and militarism everywhere. We need to address it. So here's some questions that we might want to think about. How can we improve our practice to better address the needs of those that we serve? How can we, drawing on the words of Rotary International presidents, create hope in the world? How can we unleash the power of the magic of Rotary? These are some open questions for us. Now, one of the things that I often get when I'm speaking with Rotarians and yeah, I've spoken at many district conferences, annual conferences, and things like this is, oh, but addressing warfare goes against ideas of Rotary's alignment with positive peace. And that's not really the correct way of looking at it. If we think about positive peace in the sense of non-violently transforming conflict, if we think about it in the sense of the attitudes, the behaviors, and the structures that create and sustain peace, then obviously we need to think about war because it's the main obstacle to these things. Now, Rotary, as we know, has brilliant partnerships. Now, I know Sam's a very much partnership guy. So if you're interested in partnerships, um, two big partnerships that Rotary have it's really, really proud of, brilliant partnerships, are the UN and UNESCO. Now, if we think of the UN, for example, the main mandate of the UN, the reason for being, their raison d'etre, is to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. That was their reason for being, for coming into being. UNESCO, in its preamble, since wars begin in the minds of men, it's in the minds of men that the defense of peace must be constructed. And then finally, IEP does a brilliant job, brilliant job. I'm a positive peace activator, big fan of looking at attitudes, institutions, structures that create and sustain peaceful societies. What it does not do, and a missing element in his work, and I've also looked at this in terms of other big organizations, they do not look at or take a systems approach to war. Take a systems approach to peace, but not to war. What we need to do is have a balanced perspective. So here's the question: what does all this mean for Rotary? If Rotary is to realize its potential, and Rotary knows this, has to move beyond projects to work across organizations, networks, sectors, disciplines, generations, cultures, countries. It knows this. One thing it could improve on is it could combine current efforts with positive peace with other efforts to also be focused on anti-war as well, to have a more balanced approach. That's one area which could think about improving. So we need to support. So what does this mean then? Well, one of the things it means is that we need to think, and I'm part of the Rotary system, myself as well. We need to think within the Rotary ecosystem. How can we better support those within the ecosystem to confront the challenges that are detrimental to the areas of focus? And hopefully, I give a perspective on some of the ones that really stand out. Every moment spent trying to prevent or end war is a moment spent really working towards something that we want, such as creating and sustaining peace. And we know that the work to replace a war system or a violent system, it can't be done through violence. I love this saying from one of the world's leading peace activists, Kathy Kelly, who's our board. She's our board president at World Beyond War. You can't be a vegetarian between meals, and you can't be a pacifist between wars. So I think that's a really great way of looking at it. So, what are some other implications? This is really, really important because I'm not saying every Rotarian is going to be interested in this, but what I do say is this: none of this is to suggest that engaging with the problem of war is all that matters in peace and development. Of course, it doesn't. I'm a psychotherapist by training. I understand there's lots of other things that need to be done. Nor is it to say that every single Rotarian should engage in this topic of preventing or ending or addressing or learning about war. However, here's the big thing. It is to suggest, as one of the world's largest humanitarian and peace building organizations, more within Rotary should, is my perspective as a Rotary Peace Fellow, positive peace activator, worked with Rotarians around the world for over a decade. But here's the question. Okay, well, how can we do that? So what I want to do is end really, really quickly with three things and give an insight into some Rotarian leaders who are already thinking about how they can improve their impact. And I've laid it out in this way: educate, apply, and teach. What do I mean by this? Educate, we can start by educating ourselves. One of the things that we know is no one knows everything, and we can always learn from others, So when we're thinking about education, here are two educational courses, both of which were co-created with past board members of the Rotary Action Group for Peace and include collaborations with, right now, Rotary Action Group for Peace members, Rotaract, Rotary Peace Fellows, Rotarians around the world. The one on the left is quite selective because it's focused on young people, but 18 to 35. Since 2021, we've connected, educated, supported, mentored young people in 28 countries. And we're currently running the third iteration right now, which has 9 countries involved, including Afghanistan. But in the past, we've trained young people from Ukraine, Russia, South Sudan, Venezuela, Colombia, Iraq, Haiti, etc. The one on the right-hand side, it's a free course called Ending War 101. And it's created by, with, and for the Rotary community to try and help them improve their peace building work. This is free, so you can go and take that course and get an introduction to this kind of ways of thinking and working for peace. What else can we do? Well, another thing you could do is take action. And there's loads of things that you can do here. And maybe in the question and answers, I can say a little bit more about this. But the first place to start getting involved with the peace and global movement to end wars is to sign the Peace Pledge. Like I said, we've got hundreds of thousands around the world who have signed the Peace Pledge, and from 203 countries and counting. So please go ahead and sign the Peace Pledge. And then the third thing is the best way I've found over the years really to kind of embed learning is not to just learn about it, not just to apply it, but it's to teach others. That's really the best way of that you really embed this learning yourself. Here's another free resource that we actually co-created with the Global Campaign for Peace Education, which is the platform for peace education around the world. And we actually won the Global Educators Challenge for this resource, which is a free resource. Go online. And it includes lots of tools, videos from some of the leading thinkers and practitioners in peace building, including Ambassador Chowdhury from the UN, including Cora Weiss from the Hague Appeal for Peace, um, our executive director, etc., and provides lots of tools that you can take and start conversations in your community. Loads of Rotarians use it in their clubs as well to have conversations around these issues. There we go. So hopefully I give a perspective in terms of what the elephant in the room is. Hopefully I've convinced some, maybe. If not, I'd love to have a chat about why it's important for Rotary to think about war if they are interested in advancing the prospects for peace and development in the world, and how you might start to get involved in this kind of work. So, and I'm just looking at the time. Hopefully, I've kept to the time. So, hopefully, I have lots of time for questions and answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Phill. That was amazing and I think a very informative, very quick, but very informative overview and I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to hearing questions from our audience. So those of you who are here live, please feel free to raise your hand, clicking on the reactions but icon in the webinar, or or if you want, you can just send your questions in through the chat, and I will try and take them as they come. As the host, I'm going to kind of take the lead here on the very first question for you, Bill. So, I in your opinion, you mentioned that there's been challenges in mobilizing kind of Rotary's network to confront the issues of war and generally. What do you think has been the most significant challenge in kind of that mobilization? And what do you think is a path to overcoming that?
Oh, that's a great question. Really good question. Thank you, Sam. Okay. I think there's a number of different challenges, and it's not unique to Rotary. Beyond Rotary, I work in lots of different areas. I'm on the board of the Journal for Peace Education, on other boards as well, of that work in this broader field of peace building. But one
Mhm.
of the misunderstandings, and this is something that can easily be addressed, is that positive peace and anti-war work are different paths. One is negative peace, one is positive peace. That's not true. Basically they complement each other. If we think, for example, take Johann Galton, who's the father of peace studies, his original understanding of positive peace was it included non-violent approaches to addressing conflict. Well, if that's the case, then obviously we need to roll out this idea of, war and militarism. If we take IEP's current definition of the attitudes, behaviors, structures that create and sustain peace, then in turn that means thinking about, well, what are some of the things, the attitudes, behaviors, and structures that don't create and sustain peace? And then that makes us think about, well, violent systems. And then we obviously need to think about the most violent system of all, war. That's one thing. Another big thing is that although it has been in the DNA of Rotary right from the beginning, which is true, it's also very true to say that peace in the discipline, study, and practice is fairly new within Rotary, and especially more recently with the great relationship with IEP. Um, it's more difficult getting involved with this work, for example, not to give away from the brilliant work that's done around polio and things like this, but given an injection, for example, is what we call a clock problem for those that might know, is different from a cloud problem, like a peace problem, which there's no real one easy fix. So it does require a little bit more work. Um, the other thing, which is also mirrored within the peace building field, is that, and I used to think this, and I'm just saying this as well, that I used to think this until I got to World Beyond War and did my PhD and everything, that being nice to each other, to oneself and others, will be sufficient. I'm a psychotherapist. I know about that. I know about being nice to each other and things like this. This is necessary, really, really necessary. And people, when I'm on calls, they often say, "What can I do?" First thing to do is be a nice person. You know, that's a great start. But asking people to then think about looking at the bigger systems, that's a bigger ask. That requires more effort. And then Rotarians are busy working people. They don't always have the time to kind of do that as well. So it does require it's harder work to kind of do this kind of work, to mobilize people. But the good thing is that we do have, people mobilized around this, and there's some wonderful Rotarian leaders that are leading the charge, and we're working in collaboration with them with regards to that. But it takes time. It takes time.
Yeah. And we have a great question in our chat from Martin. So, Rotary focuses on positive peace through our areas of focus like education, global health, economic development, environment. From your perspective, which of these areas do you think offers the greatest untapped potential for peace building? Is it just education, or are there another one?
That's a good question as well. Thank you, Mine. That's a good one. That's another great one as well. So within my day job for World Beyond War, I'm the education director. So I'm going to say education is fundamentally important, and there's a couple of reasons for that because it's about the mindset. It's about knowing is a good path towards growing. So hence why I put the first one as educate yourself there. You know, a lot of people don't know some of the things that I presented today, and that's not the case. All
Mhm.
of us are ignorant, including myself, around certain things, right? Because we haven't been exposed. So what we need to do is be exposed to this, and then what we also need to do is think critically. Don't ever accept anything I'm saying, or anybody else without thinking and checking it out, And this is one thing I always say in the classes and courses that I run. I'm giving a perspective here backed by loads of evidence. But what we need to do is have critically thinking human beings, and then that, in a sense, is education. It brings us back
Mhm.
to education. But education is necessary, but not sufficient. If I know a lot and I'm Dalai Lama and I'm sat in Nepal meditating, it might be necessary, peace of self, you know. And if I'm nice with other people, etc., and get along well in relationships, that's necessary and helpful as well. But if we have a system that causes all these wars around the world. We need action as well. So hence why the program that we run and developed in collaboration, with Rotarians is peace education and action for impact. Both together are needed, education and action. But I would say a starting point is education. And that's something we can all do.
Yeah, thank you. Another great question in our chat. What are the biggest challenges in engaging communities and young people in peace education today?
That's another good one. With another that's on, I'm actually looking at that with the Council of Europe, which is looks after 46 member states in Europe. So Raquel and others that are in Europe might be interested in this. They know that peace education is really undervalued and under-resourced, and they've been going through a process the last 2 years of thinking of putting together a policy, which will be called a Committee of Ministers recommendation on peace education to inform peace education across the 46 member states. I'm the lead author of that, and I've been suggesting what should happen within countries, member states, etc., to engage more young people. Because if you look around the world, young people are really, really engaged in climate change work, and rightly so, because it's an existential threat. Okay. They're not as engaged in peace building work. So, what we
Mhm.
need to do is get better at showing the links between climate change and peace, climate change and war. And we need to make it relevant. Like, for example, sometimes when I'm on the call and people say, Phill, a world beyond war, where do I start with that? It's humongous. I can't do anything. And that's a really good response. So what we say is, which a Rotan is really good at this, start with where you're at. Have a conversation in your clubs about this. What are we spending, for example, within our community or our country on preparing for war, and how can we perhaps, because we need to think that 2 trillion that's spent preparing for war each year, it doesn't come from nowhere. It's diverted from healthcare. It's diverted away from education. is diverted away from pensions. So we need to make education, this goes back to Martin's point, make it relevant for people. You know, bring it back and make it relevant to them. When it's relevant to them and they care about it, they're more likely to do something about it. But
Mhm.
yeah, I have a real big passion for work with young people, and in particular now, and this is the thing that I wrote in the Council of Europe uh, report, is that Gandhi always spoke about if we want real peace in the world, we need to start with children. That's always been the case, philosophically the case. But now we have more young people on the planet than ever before in the whole of history. Okay, and we can either think of young people in three ways generally. One, victims of violence, and we know a lot about that. Two, perpetrators of violence. We know a fair bit about that also. The third one, we know a lot less about young people as peace builders. And that's where Rotary and other organizations come in to provide opportunities for young people to become peace builders.
I know that you recommended some trainings that were there. I was wondering if there are other resources that you think Rotary members and general public who might be interacting with this can use to deepen their understanding kind of on this peace education and action.
Yeah. So we have something called a pro peace and anti-war resource database where we've created for free on our website, World Beyond War resource database. You can look at over 1,000 different resources, and you can actually search by topics. You know, positive peace, environmental peace building, um, anti-war activism, militarism, etc. So there's one resource. It's free of
Hmm.
charge. You can go and download it wherever you want. The Study War No More is a really good resource that we put together with the Global Campaign for Peace Education. Again, that's free as well, and it includes some of the leading thinkers and policymakers on peace building. The Rotary Action Group for Peace has loads of good resources as well. So just do a plug to the Rotary Action Group for Peace. IEP, the Institute for Economics and Peace, has some great resources as well. There's some really brilliant organizations out there doing brilliant work. And within World Beyond War, we just want to contribute to that work, as much as we can. But the one big thing that we know is that we accomplish so much more together, and we should be collaborating much more.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for your questions and for joining us for this recording. If you're inspired to get involved and make a difference in your community, we invite you to learn more about Rotary International and the Rotary Club of Worldwide Impact. With that being said, I would like to thank Phill Gittins for joining us here today and for giving us such a great kind of overview and introduction to all of this. And I'm going to turn it back over to him for one last word before we uh, log off for this recording. Phill, the floor is yours.
Thank you. No, just sharing the love with everybody. Thank you to everybody for everything that you're doing. Lovely to meet some of you on the call. And Raquel, lovely to see you again. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor and privilege to be here with you. And I love being part of this Rotary network. So thank you, everybody. And if we can support in any way, please reach out to us. But all the best. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Until next time, my name is Sam Kendall with Worldwide Impact, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.